Today on Locked On Bama, we're going to talk a little prime time, and I don't mean Deion Sanders.
Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, got some news today that Alabama, Texas, to the shock of nobody, will be the primetime game, 6 p.m. on ESPN, second game of the year. This is big news. I love it. I love the fact we're not going to play in the morning. I also love the fact that this episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. We'll talk about Bird Dogs here in just a little bit. But, Jimmy, big news if you ask me. Look, I'm one of those guys that loves to talk about future schedules. I love to talk about, to speculate when our games will be on TV. I just think that's so cool. I don't know why. I mean, I guess it gives me something to get through the summer. I love to think about, when Alabama and Purdue announce for a basketball game in Toronto. I just think that's awesome. It's more fun to me to talk about the game than the actual game sometimes. But Alabama, Texas at 6 p.m. ESPN, second week of the season, probably the most anticipated game of the year, I would say.
Yeah, even got word from a local ticket broker that's worked the Tuscaloosa market for a long time. He thinks this will be the most in-demand ticket since the 2011 regular season game with LSU, the game of the century in 2011. He thinks this game, the tickets will be in similar demand to that. And now that it's 6 p.m. kickoff, there's just no doubt it's true. You avoid the heat of the day. That 11 a.m. Texas kick last year was just absolutely brutal. One of the hottest games I've ever been to. I think ESPN College Game Day is likely to be there. I think it could be one of those rare Saturdays that Game Day's here and SEC Nation from SEC Networks here. I mean, it's going to be really, really big because it's early. It's two huge brands. It's two teams probably both in the top 10. Star power in the game for sure. And Herb Street and Fowler in the booth. It has such a huge, big game feel to it. There'll be thousands of people in Tuscaloosa, Luke, without tickets. I think there'll be a lot of Texas fans in Tuscaloosa without tickets, just watching the game on the strip downtown and on big screens on the quad. What fantastic news. I was a little worried it would be 2:30 in the sense that, this is the last year of the CBS contract. But for whatever reason, CBS sometimes doesn't start broadcasting games until week 3 because they have U.S. Open tennis in weeks 1 and 2, which is a prestige thing for them. But hey, I'm no TV executive, but I'm pretty sure Alabama Texas football is going to outdraw the women's final, which is what is Saturday afternoon from Monday prime time. I'm not sure what time that tennis match will kick off. But wow, Luke, I'm excited. I was already woke up in a football mood, but this just like you. I mean, when you get a kickoff time, now you can set your day. Now you know what your day will look like. I mean, in terms of the itinerary for the day, what's going on, and again, avoiding the heat of the day is big too. Anytime you can play a night game in September, that's big. But Texas fans, they've never been to Tuscaloosa, and now they'll get to see Bryant-Denny with the big light show. So, yeah, I'm fired up. I've seen a couple of lines at Alabama, 7-8 point favorite or so. I think as the game gets closer, that might get a little tighter, which is, fine. I think this might be, how about this, Luke? Based on when we play, and I'm not talking about 6 p.m., I'm talking about when we play, this might be the toughest game on the whole schedule.
I agree because our quarterback situation probably will not be settled. It'll
Right.
probably still be up in the air to a degree. I mean, maybe, obviously somebody will have started against Middle Tennessee State. But my bet is that 2, maybe 3 guys play quarterback that game. And, things are sort of still up in the air. Now, I guess it's theoretically possible that things are up in the air at Texas, even though Quinn Ewers seems to have a stranglehold on that for now. I don't know. But I'm with you. I think this is definitely one of the tougher games of the year. I think there's a lot of pressure on Alabama to reassert its dominance in this game too. There's a lot of pressure on Texas to show they belong. There's part of me that hates the fact that this is about to be more of a routine game, because I like the fact that this is sort of I like looking at this as sort of a one-off thing. Like, okay, we get Texas for a home and home, and then we sort of back away for a little bit and maybe take on somebody different. Well, now they're going to be in Tuscaloosa, at least once every 4 years, it seems like, because isn't that the deal, that everybody's going to get to play everybody home and away, assuming you go to a 9-game schedule in this pod system or whatever that they're not calling a pod system. But
I've heard a fun rumor about that, by the way. Ready for a fun rumor?
I am.
And again, I want to stress this is rumor. As we know, Alabama's been the number one proponent in the SEC of playing the 9-game schedule. It's been Alabama. Nick Saban has been, way before Texas and Oklahoma joined the league. Before that, Nick Saban was saying we need to play 9 games. If people don't understand that, then they either don't know the facts or they're being disingenuous, because Nick Saban has led the fight for a 9-game schedule. So the 9-game schedule is presented, and they said this is the best we can do. And Alabama doesn't like it, because Alabama's 3 opponents, in Alabama's view, gives Alabama the toughest slate of anyone in the whole conference, and a couple of teams that Alabama considers it's a direct competition to win this league have lighter slates, and Alabama considers that playing field unfair. So the rumor is that Alabama is going to tip the scales by withdrawing support for 9 games and supporting the 8 games, because Alabama feels that's the only fair way to do it. This is what you're going to do with the 9 games. We don't want any part of it. It's not fair. And if we start supporting the 8 game, that tips the scales to where now the majority of the league, because it's supposedly roughly 7 versus 7 on the 9 games, and it's kind of a deadlock. But Alabama, if they withdrew their support for 9 games, started supporting the 8 games, then 8 games would win the day. And that is a rumor. I'm not saying it's true, but I've heard it. It's fun. It's fun.
I hope it's true. I hope it's true. I mean, because it's BS. If Alabama has to play LSU, Tennessee, and Auburn every year, nobody else has to do anything like that and remotely close. So I'm totally fine saying that. Now, look, and here's the thing. I know some people say, well, it sort of evens out. It doesn't even out. It doesn't even out at all.
No, I mean, Tennessee would be playing something like Tennessee would play something like Georgia, Kentucky, and Vandy.
That's BS.
I mean, we're competing with Tennessee
and I
to win the
understand. Again, there's going to be, first of all, things are moderately cyclical, but they're cyclical in a very non-cyclical way, in a sense that Alabama is always going to be up around in here. Now, they may take a dip for a year or two to 5, but then they're going to be back up. Vandy may be good. They had back-to-back 9-win seasons under the coach at Penn State now, but they might never do that again. So, I mean, to say it's cyclical is
Alabama, under the apparent proposal, Luke, Alabama is the only team playing 3 teams who have all won the national championship in the last 25 years.
Yep.
No one else has that. So
that'd be crap.
And again, I'm not saying that it's true. I'm just saying that rumor's out there, and it would just be funny to me. Although everyone's gonna. I mean, the backlash against Alabama, you can set your watch to it if that's what happens. If that's really what happens. But it's funny to me in the sense that Alabama led the charge on playing 9 games. Alabama wanted to play 9 before Texas and Oklahoma were even in the league, and then when Texas and Oklahoma were in the league, Alabama still wanted to play 9. They just saw the 9-game plan and said, nope, that's unfair to us and fair to everyone else. That's the rumor anyway. If they couldn't change it to satisfy Alabama, Alabama's like, okay, we'll play 8 games, and we'll just have 1 annual opponent, which in this case will be Auburn, and then all.
It reminds me. Yeah, it reminds me of like if somebody. I've always wanted to go to Cuba for whatever reason. I always thought it was beautiful, like it's stepping back in time, like going back to the 50s or 60s or something. I always thought it'd be cool, right? And somebody said, "Okay, Luke, you got a free trip to Cuba. You got to swim though." I'm like, "No, I don't want to do that." I mean, but you always wanted to go. I know I did, but I didn't want to swim. Okay, so anyway, I got to tell everybody about bird dogs. I'm supposed to have an overlay for the YouTube guys out there. I don't. Y'all don't do it. Y'all know about bird dogs, the clothing line. Absolutely awesome stuff. I've been seeing them advertised so much, and I realize, it's gotten to be one of those things where the more you see somebody advertise, you're like, that company's getting pretty big, and their stuff always looks so cool to me. And I'm not a clothes horse, so I don't order a lot of clothes. Like you probably seen me wear this shirt 30 times on this podcast, but now we got them as a sponsor. They're going to send us some merch. I'm so excited about it. And I can't wait to get it and love it and dote over it. And then I'm going to order some more. Bird Dogs, they bringing you today's episode. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. And when you enter the promo code LockedOnCollege, enter that promo code LockedOnCollege. They'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. If you don't like Yetis and you don't like tumblers, well, you just don't need to listen to this podcast, because we are the Yeti lovingest, tumbler lovingest, bird dog havingest bunch you ever saw in your life. So go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege, birddog.com/lockedoncollege. Put in Locked On College as your promo code, and you will get a free Yeti style tumbler with every order. That is going to be super cool. I'm telling you, this bird dog stuff is so awesome. I can't wait to get our free merch, Jimmy. That is going to be so cool. I can't wait to show it off here on the podcast. Boy. All right. So on tomorrow's podcast, we will continue your countdown. Speaking of your countdown, we are also right now going to talk about Yhonzae Pierre, who is number, 79 in your countdown. Now, this is going to make some people get a little, ornery, I think, because I love Yancy Pierre. I think he could easily play this year. But you're not saying he's the 79th most talented player on this team. You're saying, in terms of, do you think he'll play this year? He might be number 79 if you had to rank people, which you are currently doing. So Yancy Pierre out of Eufaula, who is exceptionally fast, got long arms, vicious. I think that's a good way to put it. Saw him in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. I thought he looked good. I just think he's a really good player, and I think you've got him at number 79. If I were doing my own ranking, I would have him probably more in the low 60s, but I can't wait to hear why you have him here.
Yeah, just as a guy that, it's not a statement about his talent. As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say today I would project that one day Yhonzae Pierre will be a multi-year starter at Alabama, an all-star player who does things like win first-team All-SEC honors, and then is a high draft pick, like in the, no worse than like a day 2 type draft pick. I couldn't be any higher on Yhonzae in the long term. And I also think he is a guy that could be a good player quickly. I just am still in the part of the rankings where I'm projecting red shirts, and I'm not going to rank a guy who's going to redshirt over a guy that we're going to see play every single week or most weeks. We're just not going to see in this fall. This ranking is about this fall's team, not your 4-year projection at Alabama. So in relation to this fall's team, I've picked out about 12 guys or so, 13, a little less than half the class, 12 or 13 guys that I think, boy, what a great picture that is, by the way. He looks like a 5-star just in that photo.
Look at those arms, Jimmy. He can pick up a quarter without bending over.
Yeah, long arms are just, that's a pass rusher right there made in a lab. So I'm excited about Pierre. I just think he's going to redshirt. I found 3 reasons why I think he's going to redshirt. Sometimes you only need one, but there's 3 I feel. Number one, he does need to add size. He does. He's not as big and thick as a Will Anderson or a Dallas Turner, or Chris Braswell just yet. That's been our starting outside linebackers last year and this year. He's not as heavy, not as strong as those guys yet. So reason enough is that he does need to get a little bigger, not stunningly bigger. He doesn't need to go on the organic peanut butter eating plan, but he needs to spend a year getting bigger and stronger. Number 2, he's a late arrival. We have 31 or 32 new players when you count the portal guys, but really just about every single one of them. Only 4 of the freshmen the true freshmen. Only 4 of them did not enroll early: Upshaw, Keon Keeley, Richard Young, and Connor Talty. So Pierre is one of the 4 that did not enroll early and go through spring. So that's going to put him behind the others. He didn't spend the spring practicing, working out with the team, learning the playbook, learning the scheme. He was back home in Eufaula doing high school things. No fault of his own, but it's going to put him behind the others. So that's reason number 2 to redshirt. Reason number 2, frankly, and that's look who's ahead of him. How are you going to find snaps? Nick Saban has not normally rotated at this position beyond about 3 players. There's been about a 3-player max rotation. Let's even say this year they decided to move it to 4 just simply because there's so many good players. Well, Yhonzae is not going to beat out Dallas Turner or Chris Braswell. I mean, we should know that. I'll tell you who's playing like a first-team starter now is Quandarius Robinson. Q Robinson really turned a corner at the end of last fall. He carried that through the spring. He played like a first-team player the entire spring, and he deserves first-team snaps. And I think he'll get some subbing in for Turner and Braswell, as a pass rusher. So he's number 3. I'm gonna go ahead and say, even though he's a true freshman and a late arrival, I'm going to distinguish between Pierre and Keon Keeley. I think Keon Keeley is just at a whole nother level. And I think like a Will Anderson or a Bryce Young, I think Keon Keeley's in that class of player. I would put him 4th, which means that even at 5th and 6th on the offensive line, outside linebacker pecking order, you still have Keanu Coate, who had like 3 sacks on A-Day? He had like 3 sacks. I got him 5th. And 6th is Jeremiah Alexander. And even 7th is Quay Russell, who played outside linebacker this spring, and he was here all spring, and Pierre wasn't. So when you look at all of those guys, he would have to jump over to get very limited snaps. I just don't see why you would just waste that year of eligibility. You can still play in 4 games and the bowl. You still get him ready to play if needed. I think you practice him like you intend to play him. And in fact, you do play him in a couple of games to get his feet wet. But I see no reason to waste by playing him in a 5th or a 6th game for about 4 snaps. It's just unwise. You never know down the road when he could get hurt or something like that. And you really wish, that he had an extra year. Well, this gives him the extra year. So that's why I think Yhonzae Pierre will redshirt, and redshirting is the sole reason I have him here at 79.
Boy, I just put this picture up for those on YouTube, and I mean, it may not look impressive. Look how effortlessly he is jumping. I mean, his feet, his toes aren't even pointed towards the ground, so he's sort of like flat-footed, jumping and staying flat-footed. And look at that reach, trying to block that pass. I mean, he's doing all that in pads. I mean, the guy's just a freak of an athlete, and I'm really excited about Yancy Pierre. So, Jimmy, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk some other recruiting news about the Buford Boys. And we're back. So, Jimmy, your buddy and my buddy of Hastings had a little article on the Buford kids, 2 5-stars, Edric Houston and KJ Bolden. Edric Houston, nation's number 4 defensive lineman, according to On3. He will be in town from June 23rd to June 25th. Ironically, I'll be in New York at that time, which is probably good because I would go over there and fanboy all over Edric Houston, I'm sure. Come to Bama. I love you, Edric.
That would work. That would help.
I think that would definitely help. There's nothing that today's youth in sports enjoys more than a 50-year-old man just doting over them.
Stalking him in multiple states.
Stalking, that's a much better term. I was trying to keep it where I didn't look as bad. Doting was not as good as stalking. You're right. Let's not forget, from Buford, we have Jake Pope, Justice Haynes, Isaiah Bond, and Seth McLaughlin. So we've got some ends here with KJ Bolden and Edric Houston. And I'm feeling better and better about both of their recruitments.
Yeah, Joseph Hastings even went as far as to say he would bet that we would get at least one of the 2. And honestly, as great as those 2 guys are, KJ Bolden and Edric Houston, as great as they are, hey, if you told me right now we would get one, if hey, would you take one right now, even if that means the other one's going to go to Georgia? Heck yeah. Heck yeah. And I don't care which one. I mean, I like Houston because he's, a big guy, but no, that they're awesome. And how weird is it that Buford pipeline is working out for Alabama better than the Thompson pipeline? Luke pointed that out earlier this week or last week, that we're regularly signing kids from the best program in Alabama and Thompson, but they haven't exactly been working out that great. But the beauty and more maybe on the way. And I saw pictures of a freshman they have over there that's just absolutely ridiculous. So very excited about KJ Bolden and Edric Houston liking Alabama. If you're a subscriber to Bama Insider or follow us on Twitter, you've seen the great pictures. This is how much they like Alabama. Unprompted, Joseph's going to take a picture. That's big for when we go on the road for a little inside baseball to people. We own, you got to take the photograph yourself to own it and use it, right? So it's big for Joseph that he gets photo and video that he takes that we can use it on 3. And so he takes a video of them doing the crane. He didn't ask them to do it. They did it unprompted, both of them. They're like, hey, can we say roll tide and do the crane? And just like, do whatever you want to do. and they did. So they did the crane unprompted, which shows how they both are about Alabama. And it does look like both will take an official visit to Alabama. And like Luke said, once you get them on campus and they're with their pals like Justice Haynes, we got a real good shot.
I like both these. Shoot, I've unmuted and then remuted myself. That's a first. I like both these guys.
2 for Tuesday.
Yeah, I've given you more mutes than you could possibly want today.
I got another controversial red shirt tomorrow on the ranking show. Everybody tune in to get upset with me again. I got a very controversial red shirt on tomorrow's show.
I think it's something I can't wait. Speaking, you mentioned Georgia just a minute ago. They got a commitment from Dylan Raiola. I think that's how you say it. The top quarterback in the country for next year. And Alabama's got the second best quarterback in the country for next year. And Julian Sayen's from California. Raiola's from Phoenix, Arizona. Again, Alabama and Georgia reaching out to the West Coast, getting some guys from the Pac-12 area. Meanwhile, I mean, I find that I'm a big recruiting guy, so I think that's interesting. Georgia's not going anywhere. Obviously, we're not going anywhere. And meanwhile, the ACC, Brett McMurphy puts out a report that the Magnificent Seven of the ACC, they're trying to get some support to break away from whatever current deals they have with their grant of rights and everything else. And boy, Jimmy, things are moving so fast now. I mean, it really, we said this a while back that, I mean, it's going to end up being probably 2 super conferences. I mean, will the Big 12 survive and the Pac-12 survive? I guess maybe for a little while. I can't see this ending any other way than there's a Big 10 and there's an SEC, and maybe we end up calling them something different because, I mean, it's going to be like an AFC, NFC. But the ACC looks kind of, it's funny how these the lower conferences, non-SEC, non-Big 10, they keep jockeying for position of who's last on the totem pole. I mean, for the longest time, it looked like Pac-12 was going to go the way of the dodo. Then Big 12 looked like it was left for dead. And now it looks like the ACC is the one that's being hung out to dry. And gosh, I mean, there's so many cool things to talk about. We could have 100 podcasts on who would you like to have out of that bunch of teams. I mean, some people would love Florida State. Some people would love Miami, but the problem is, or some people love Clemson. The problem is those teams don't really add any footprints for the SEC. I mean, I think North Carolina makes a ton of sense, but academically, North Carolina makes more sense for the Big 10. So, I mean, there's a lot to talk about there, but the college football landscape just is changing so fast, and I hate it because I'm a traditionalist.
Well, people need to just remember this for any sort of alignment talk, regardless of what programs you like or what colors look good or how prestigious it would be if SEC added FSU and Clemson or however you want to look at that. It's really this simple. To add to the conference, it requires a vote of the league members, and league members are all self-interested, as they should be. Alabama is too. And for Alabama or any other team in the SEC to vote to add a member, it all starts with this number. How much money are we paid by the league because we're a member of this league? How much money do we make? And let's say that figure is something like $50 million. Okay, Alabama gets $50 million because you're in the SEC. Okay, if we're going to add somebody, there's only one reason to do it. That $50 million number goes up. And it has to be explained to the league, like, hey, if we add this team or add this team, you're making more than $50 million. Here's how much money we estimate we will now make by adding these two. If you just add a team, Rutgers or VMI, just adding a team, that doesn't mean you're adding money. Some brands, some schools will add money to the league because they're either in a new TV market or TV loves them. And obviously TV drives a lot of this, but just everybody needs to keep that in mind when it comes to this discussion. And where fans really go wrong is they think it's about the prestige of adding teams that win games. No, then Boise would be a team everyone would be trying to add, but no one's trying to add Boise. Why? Because Boise, Idaho isn't a big TV market, and the state of Idaho is a terrible TV market, and Boise doesn't add money to the coffers, but they do win games. So anyway, so it's real complicated, but everybody just needs to keep that in mind about when it comes to adding teams, what they're trying to add. They're trying to add revenue, not trying to add, quote, wins.
That's going to do it for today's podcast. Thank you guys so much. We are, as of right now, one subscriber away from 4,900. So we're 101 away from 5,000. We are 5,101 away from 10,000. I mean, let's see if we can get 5,101 guys in the next 24 hours. What do y'all say?
Appreciate you. Get mad at me about who I'm going to tell you guys is going to redshirt tomorrow.
None of Yhonzae Pierre's family is going to subscribe. I can tell you that. Anyway, all right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.